I think he's put away the fetishization of being a human being and playing at being a human being and indulging in relationships. I think he's had experiences that have taught him that he needs to take more responsibility for the fact that relationships are actual, they're real.
So FYC season is here. Phenomenal season. Dexter Resurrection. I love this show so much. And you know, like Dexter has been like my everything forever. And it's been like 20 years now that the show's been on the air.
I
So it's
know,
amazing to
it's
see that.
bananas.
It's bananas. But you know, looking back now that audiences have seen the full season of Dexter Resurrection, what surprised you most about his emotional journey that perhaps you didn't fully appreciate when you first read the scripts?
Um, that's an interesting question. I think there was something that I theoretically liked the idea of, but I think the story that they created and the circumstances that Dexter finds himself with this literal new lease on life bore it out. You know, that he has a newfound OG vitality about him, you know, that he didn't quite have access to once probably once Trinity killed his wife. I mean, I think over the series proper, he was carrying around a lot, and he doesn't have amnesia. He remembers it all, but I think getting shot and waking up and still being alive and feeling like he's not even supposed to be here, his life is just gravy. Um, he's unburdened by it in a way, and I liked the fact that circumstances sort of took him out of this deliberative mode of like, do I really love my son? What's the story? He just found out his son was in New York and he went. There was an impulse that sort of overrode his sort of weighing his monstrousness versus humanity that kind of put some things to bed in a way.
This first season was incredible. And so I'm wondering, looking back now that audiences have seen the full season of Dexter Resurrection, what surprised you most about your character's emotional arc from where he begins to where it ends?
Oh, I mean, this this season was so full of surprises, and it's, and that's coming from a character that's been through a lot. I mean, Harrison comes into the season having, so much that he's running from, that,
Mhm.
in his past from before New Blood, and then the events of New Blood being exposed to, um, the truth about, about what his father really does, the connection that they share, the connection they may or may not share. There's something there. There's a mystery there, and seeing what he does, being confronted with that, and then killing him. There's so much that Harrison is
Mhm.
running from, coming into Resurrection, and watching him try to sort of almost build a life from scratch. Um, we see Harrison with a little bit of hope, like he's got some friends, he's got a job that he doesn't totally hate. Like, um, it kind of made every bump in Harrison's journey feel like a surprise, because it almost feels ironically like there's more to lose, having lost so much
Yeah.
and made this concerted effort to like have a normal life. Like Harrison ends New Blood on saying, I don't want to be right, I just want to be normal.
Mhm.
Um, and he's giving it all he can to do that. And so I think every bump in the road is a massive surprise for Harrison.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, the biggest surprise, I think, certainly is Dad.
Yeah.
is
Yeah. You're
is
alive?
holy shit, you're not dead. That's I think that's a pretty
Yeah.
big one.
So, you know, when we did speak earlier this season, you did talk about Dexter finally reaching a place where he could stop carrying some of that guilt and regret. And then by the finale, do you think he's actually achieved that, or has he simply found new things to feel responsible for?
I think he's as you could expect, on his way to accumulating new baggage. Obviously, the way things end
Yeah.
with Batista is a big part of that,
Mhm.
and maintaining a sense of responsibility for his son as he moves into a career in law enforcement, and just no matter where he turns, I think he feels even if he's dissuading his son from being like him, that he's shaping his trajectory and he feels responsible for it. There's a moment of just lightness at the end, but moving forward, I think Dexter will be newly haunted.
I can imagine. I mean, all those ghosts he had in the first season, I
Yeah.
can imagine some of them following him in some way, especially the Batista relationship. It does end in a way that is so tragic. And I spoke to him about this too, because I was just so sad. It's like one of those like end of an era sort of deaths that I think
Yeah.
has been so impactful for the entire, fan base. Like everyone was really shocked by that. And I feel like Dexter not only lost like, neither of them got what they wanted at the end of that. And Dexter loses one of his closest friends who ever, like, somebody considered a close friend. So, like, what did that loss mean to you as someone who has played the character for so long? And obviously, what does that change for Dexter moving forward?
I mean, it was heartbreaking. It was a tough day, and it was important to me that we saw what it cost and will likely continue to cost Dexter, that loss. And it's another instance of a guy who fancies himself simulating relationships and having as much of a real friendship as would be possible for a guy like him, but not a real friendship. But then when you actually lose that person, it's not a theoretical loss. Like it's real, and it's something that he carries now, and something that humanizes him all the more. Um, but yeah, it was the end of an era. I mean, yeah, about 20 years since we did the pilot. I mean, being able to shoot scenes with David in this season was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think maybe we talked about this before, but to not have to sort of compare notes or manufacture some sort of backstory, to have real 20-year-old memories
Yeah.
with another actor and another character. Is the only way to do that is to do it. It's a part of what's sort of wondrous about doing something and returning for something after this much time.
Yeah. And I will say that that scene, the last scene you have with David is again something that I think I was watching it sort of like not really like I was in a disbelief because I was like this can't be real, but the performance you gave was I think one of the career best across all these Dexter episodes because the way you hold so much weight in your face and in your expression and your body, it just felt like something that all of us felt. And like I can say
Yeah.
I can speak for myself where I was like because I've watched the show since the beginning and so like being able to see how he has evolved in grief was also something
Yeah.
that I feel was so different.
I felt it was important, it was a really big loss, and it was something that I think legitimately did cost Dexter something. It was the last thing he wanted. Um, and I felt like, it kind of flipped the standard of relationship. Usually Dexter is there bringing the audience along on the ride, and I think in that moment he was there to sort of embody the audience's emotion.
Yeah.
That scream that happens at the end of the episode was something that on the day I was just like, I have to release this, we have to just, can we try that?
Yeah.
And, it wound up in the episode, but it just felt, like a way to beyond words express the simultaneous grief and rage at life having once again gotten away from him, or
Yeah.
his control.
I think about the moral center of Harris and how he is basically somebody who grounds Dexter a lot. And I feel like he does spend a lot of the season afraid that he's inherited his dad's darkness. But we do see, all these sorts of scenes and these moments where it suggests that he actually is very different. So, like, how did you approach playing that distinction between what we thought he might turn into to what he actually is?
What I love so much about this show in general, and then specifically what the writers have given me is that, there isn't quite an answer. We spend all of New Blood going, he's just like his dad, he's just like his dad, he's just like his dad. And then we finish and we go, is he? And then we go all of Resurrection going, he's not like his dad, he's not like his dad, he's not like his dad.
Mhm.
Is he? Like it's
Yeah.
the fun for me as an actor
Wow.
and I think some of the fun for the audience lies in a little bit of the question. I remember having a conversation with Michael where he sort of was like, if you're ever stuck between two like directions to go,
Mhm.
uh, it's both. Like, I mean, Dexter, that character, Dexter's the king of that sort of dichotomy. Like, he's a monster, he's a human, he's a sociopath, but but he cares so deeply about his son.
Yeah.
It's constantly evolving and changing shape. And to get to play a character that is just sort of going through this like pressure cooker,
Yeah.
um, that's already sort of torn in different directions on the
Yeah.
inside. What directions are his instincts really even pointed at? Like we know that there's a lot of pain and grief and certainly some rage. Um, how does that manifest? I think it gets to be a little bit different in each
Mhm.
iteration, and that for me as an actor is just like a playground.
Yeah. And the writing is so, I love how the writing is so like nuanced and layered, and like you get to really play within those sorts of, like, you get to weave yourself into that, which is the most interesting thing about like how you play your character and how the show, kind of portrays Harrison. But one of the most interesting things that I noticed was like he doesn't seem to experience killing someone the same way Dexter does. And like what did that tell you about who Harrison is versus who he fears he might become? Because I feel like that is a very specific sort of grading to him, like a color, like a hue to him.
I think, I mean, I'm not going to go and say that Dexter has no empathy
Hmm.
because I think that's like that would be too, that's a one-dimensional answer to a question that you didn't ask. But he certainly the way that Dexter experience, does or does not experience it, or at least, at least expresses it, is very different than Harrison. Harrison, while he clearly has the capability to commit some pretty unspeakable acts of violence.
Hmm.
Harrison cares deeply, and not just about himself, and not just about his immediate surroundings or friends or family. Like he is very much somebody who cares about human life and about justice. And it's I think it's a little bit. I don't want to answer without sort of judging Dexter. I think it's a little bit less self-serving.
Yeah.
Um, he cares really, really deeply, and I think with that comes an outward vulnerability
Hmm.
that we don't see certainly as often from his father. Um, but yeah, I think no matter how much in a given moment Harrison needs to react and it explodes out. Um,
Yeah.
there's then a very human, very self-aware side that steps in. And that's sort of what was really, really fun to play with. What's pulling at Harrison? It's not just that, like, ooh, I'm scared of the police
Mhm.
catching me, or it's what I'm scared of. I'm scared of becoming my father.
Right.
I'm scared of becoming what is maybe a monster. Do I think that he's my vision of my father is sort of complicated and stirred up, and so it's you end up with this just like gumbo of emotions. And um that it can certainly be confusing, but just I don't know. I said it before. That just felt like a playground
Yeah.
that I got to. It gives you the freedom to make a lot of choices,
Mhm.
um, and there's not much that won't feel justified because of how much this kid goes through, and and the stock that he comes from.
Hmm. And Dexter does eventually compare Harrison more to like Deborah than himself, which I thought was so sweet, and also such a thing for Dexter to be able to measure what he knew and loved about Deb, and then kind of applying it to his own son. Like, what did that mean to you, especially given how important she was to the emotional DNA of this franchise?
I mean, well, I love Jen Carpenter. She's awesome,
Mhm.
independently, but um, just to be an integral part of Dexter's life and story, as an actor outside the show is a blessing, and feels really, really wonderful. Um, to be connected to or compared to in any way a character that's that sort of universally loved. As a character that was not universally loved after New Blood, feels really, really feels really lovely because I think and I think there are ways in which we I don't know, touch some of the same nerves. She did so much through the arc of that show, but she definitely, among the many, many things that she did for the show and for Dexter, for the
Mhm.
character, she sort of was one of his tethers to humanity.
Mhm.
Uh, one of the people that he lived for. I think I'm going to butcher it, but I feel like it's in maybe it's the first episode.
Mhm.
He's like, yeah, I don't know if I could, I don't know if I love anybody, but if I did, it'd be Deb.
Yeah.
Um, she tethers him to humanity. Like and in season 1, we start with Dexter as this like apex predator, this sort of lizard-brained serial killer. We're so used to the story of like the complicated man that becomes a monster.
Mhm.
And in this show, we start with a monster that becomes
Yeah.
this complicated man that evolves. And I think Deb played a massive, massive part in that. And I think Harrison does too. I think Harrison and Harry, ironically,
Yeah.
uh, sort of the Morgans. They really do keep him, a human.
Yeah. And he does spend a lot of the season imagining like this future for himself and like building something steady, like wanting to go to school and having a relationship. But he's also pulled back into Dexter's world. Like, how did you think about that tension between the life he wants and then the life he's inheriting? He may be inheriting.
It goes back to what Michael said before. Like it's as an actor, it's exciting because it's
Mm.
both. Like it's both have to exist. And in both existing, we get to see all of the conflict and how messy that's going to get. Um, and it raises the stakes. There's more to fight for.
Mhm.
Um, because I'm fighting for the life that I want to live. And then at the same time, I'm fighting for the life that I have. I'm fighting for the dad that I have.
Mhm.
Uh, and marrying those two, um, I think that like that's where you get fireworks.
Yeah. Speaking of like this season, this first season, one thing that struck me so much was how Dexter spends years believing that Harrison has inherited his darkness, but he starts to slowly realize that Harrison may actually be more like Deb, which was very sweet. And I was talking to Jack about this too, but it's just something that I think it says a lot because everybody loved Deb, and especially Dexter was using her, like not using her, but he was like she was his tether, and she was his
Yeah.
like emotional grounding. So, what do you think that realization now means for Dexter while he looks at Harrison?
Well, I think it's a lot healthier,
Yeah.
um, projecting himself
Mhm.
onto his son. I think he realized was a mistake in terms of who Harrison is, but also was a mistake in terms of Dexter's own well-being. You know, it's the last thing he needs is to stare into a, a mirror of his own abyss, to stare into his son and have reflected back to him the sort of most potent sense of humanity embodied by his relationship with his sister is a lot healthier and also a lot more accurate. I mean, I think it's not wishful thinking. I think his observation that he's likely more like her than him is legit.
By the finale, I loved seeing it, but like Harrison and Dexter, they're finally so honest with each other, and that though can actually unlock like a very dangerous sort of world because now they know everything like between each other, and especially for Harrison, it kind of puts him in danger. What did that shift, sort of open up for you and Michael as scene partners because it is now a new dynamic going forward as father and son.
I mean, I think mostly it was it was kind of a relief. We spent so much time
Uh-huh.
um in New Blood and like the first half of Resurrection with some version of Harrison being, alienated, frustrated, disgusted, and I think it's all deserved in the various narrative points we find ourselves in the show. But it was really nice. Like I remember that there felt like a literal catharsis
Mhm.
in the moment where Dexter, reaches his hand across the table after he's gotten rid of Lady Vengeance and sort of gotten the police off Harrison's back, and it's Harrison receives that active service, and then they have the conversation about his mother. Like, it's all of it sort of opens up. There was just like, I'm as Jack being like, oh my God, thank you, when he reached his hand across the table
Yeah.
and Harrison takes it. He says, "You're all I have. You're all I have too." And so yeah, that was a door that, like,
Hmm.
it was very satisfying to open, because we did a little bit of New Blood, but it lasts like 2 seconds, and
Uh-huh.
we spend most of New Blood with some version of like, fuck you, dad. Like, it's
Yeah. Uh-huh.
um yeah, so that's it. It felt great to
Yeah.
it has felt great to kind of open up that side of the relationship.
Yeah, I will say as like a viewer and like a longtime fan of the show, watching that scene was one of the most beautiful scenes. It just felt so natural to everything that has happened, and like him being so vulnerable with your character was like I think one of the best scenes I've seen on TV like last year. And it was just like something that was so important for this character too. And having your character there kind of like being that tether now is I think something so exciting, especially going into season 2. And I know you can't give spoilers about anything like that, but I'm wondering like, now that he's at his side and he's operating, and now he's no longer really operating alone, what does that open up for you as an actor, especially now that you kind of, I feel like, have more liberties to kind of build Harrison to be a different, sort of model of what he was before going into like the second season?
I mean, yeah, I certainly can't really say anything, but
Mhm.
I think I can say this. One of the things I love about the show is the way that it deals with evolution, the way that, and watching Michael evolve Dexter alongside, Clyde and Scott and our writers. Like, Michael always ends up with like a different version of Dexter. We see the evolution as it's happening, but we don't lose the history that the character has. Like, he carries all of it.
Mhm.
Um, and then the change, the changeover from New Blood to Resurrection, it was so exciting that, not a ton of time had passed necessarily, but the character had experienced just, unspeakable trauma. We're gonna get a different version of Harrison. The version of Harrison we got in Resurrection season 1 was a evolution
Mhm.
from New Blood, and in this season we get to see a new version of Harrison.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful that the writers have continued to do that, not only for Dexter, but for me too, that I get to sort of continue to explore
Mhm.
Harrison and explore Harrison's world. What does he want? What is he afraid of?
Yeah.
It's that I can, as an actor, kind of live in the realm of questions
Hmm.
and not answers.
Yeah.
Um,
So
yeah,
then,
because questions facilitate,
uh-huh.
discovery and looking for shit, as opposed
Uh-huh.
to it's this.
So then I'm wondering, like, if season 1 is about Harrison asking, like, whether he's doomed to repeat his dad's life, what answer do you think he has by the end of it, or is he still figuring that out? Especially looking ahead, like, is he still, like you said, evolution? There's obviously he's growing and he's becoming like a young man. He's gonna find his own career and his own life. But I'm wondering, like, is there an answer that you think he has about like who he is and what he wants to do?
I think an answer's forming. I think an answer's forming, and I think now what I love is I don't think that's an answerable question,
Hmm.
um, truly. But I think for Harrison, an answer is forming.
Hmm.
Like, he's been running and in the dark, running from himself, from his father, from his past. It's you know, it's a monster that's in the closet, and I don't even know what it looks like. I'm afraid that I'm like my dad. I'm afraid that I do these terrible things, and I'm really afraid that I like them. Oh my God, it's and it's all just this amorphous swirl in the dark. And the thing that you don't understand is the scariest thing. And I think leaving season 1, Harrison sees a little bit of light. Like, he's still running,
Hmm.
but I think there's a little more direction
Yeah.
uh, in where he's headed. So, and I'm excited to see where it goes. We're
I'm
still
very,
shooting, so sometimes there's surprises that happen on set, and you
yeah.
end up with a cool moment. I'm really 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 excited and grateful to be in it.
Mhm.
Um, and can't wait to see how it keeps going.
This season does repeatedly ask whether we're defined by what we've inherited or by the choices we make. Do you think Dexter finally comes to a different understanding of that idea now through Harrison?
Yeah, I mean, I think as is often the case in life, and is certainly the case in Dexter, if there's a question of is it this or is that, it's always both, you know. Um, but I think Dexter's had connections with other people in his life that have been legitimate, most notably his relationship with his sister, but he's never had responsibility or a sense of
Mhm.
responsibility for another person's well-being or their life.
Mhm.
And so that's something that is new and scary and vitalizing in this new landscape. And that's been exciting to explore. You know, Jack is he's so great and so alive and so simultaneously vulnerable and defiant. um, that I don't know, he probably is some sort of mirror for Dexter, some sort of I think he latches on to Harrison in the way he latches on to humanity more generally. I think over the course of the Resurrection season, he comes to appreciate how much he thrives on and needs connection to people who maybe have a are less burdened by his affliction and
Yeah.
allows him to tether himself to something
Uh-huh. Yeah.
a light and alive.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense too, because I feel like a lot of it is, you know, the fact that he's there now is like this emotional grounding for him. It's, Dexter's always been able to talk to, be sort of empathetic to others and have that, he has that code, so it helps. Like even his interactions with Blessing are so natural and they don't feel like, he's putting on a face. So I will say though, one of the things that I thought was so interesting this season was we see all these different like voices from Dexter's past. We see Dokes, which was great to see him again in that form.
Yeah.
And then of course Harry and Miguel and Trinity. But by the end, whose voice do you think felt more important to Dexter's understanding of himself? Because I feel like each of them pull him into focus in a specific way.
I mean, Dexter's relationship with his father has evolved. I think that's important, but is ultimately a reflection of his own inner sort of battle. His internalized father is ultimately a piece of him. I think it's the relationship with the blessing teaches him a lot, but I think what it leads him back to is the relationship primarily with his son. And I think Dexter recognizes consciously that it is that relationship that tethers him to something that keeps him from spiraling into a surrender to his darkness.
Mhm. So I do wonder, like, for a lot of the original series, Dexter was trying to convince himself, like, he could be more human. And this
Hmm.
season sort of feels like that's almost inverted because he's trying to decide what parts of his humanity are actually now, like, worth holding on to. Do you see it that way too, or do you see it, like, in another sort of aspect?
Yeah, I do. I think he's put away the fetishization of being a human being and playing at being a human being and indulging in relationships. I think he's had experiences that have taught him that he needs to take more responsibility for the fact that relationships are actual. They're real. They're not just playing out on some screen in front of him. And and I think there's something about the getting shot, almost dying,
Uh-huh.
being in some sort of liminal space between life and death, and
Uh-huh.
coming back into his body that, in a way that is probably not even conscious, makes the fact that he's a human being a little
Mm-hmm.
harder to deny.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like I said, he awakes and finds out about where his son is, and it's immediately off
Mm-hmm.
to go find him before he deliberates and fetishizes like, oh gosh, I mean, am I really, or is he really my, he just goes.
Yeah.
And so I think he's put away some of his sort of detached musings about himself and what he is and isn't, and is more an agent in the world. At the same time, he's as reconciled as ever to his compulsion. So
Yeah. And you know, then by the end of the season, he does acknowledge that he needs connection, and I think that was such a powerful moment for Dexter that he admitted something that he knew he didn't have before, and he really wanted it. So, like, how significant of a shift is that for you as a performer, trying to unlock that other layer of him that we don't really see all the time, but now we're starting to see like an evolution.
it's freeing. I mean, it's a gift in as much as, we've been at this for a while, and it does feel like a legitimate rebirth and revitalization of the character, and he feels new in a
Yeah.
way. And the stakes of his life feel different. They exist on more human terms, and I think he's wiser and maybe, certainly has battled scars, is more jaded, but I think he also has a more genuine openness and more vulnerable and consequential connection to the world around him and to the people he,
Yeah.
in as much as he can, loves.
hmm I know you can't give any spoilers. I'm not going to ask for spoilers, but I'm wondering, after everything we've seen in Dexter Resurrection season one, what is something that you are most excited to unlock for your character that we haven't seen before in this performance?
Well, as we were saying, the smoke has cleared. There
Mhm.
is new wreckage at Dexter's feet.
Mhm.
How will he move forward and incorporate all that
Uh-huh.
without wallowing in it or fetishizing it?
Uh-huh.
That's interesting to me. And also just the nuts and bolts of like, okay, I'm in New York and I worked my way through this smorgasbord of killers that were presented to me. How am I gonna keep
Yeah.
doing what I'm doing? And I think, in a way, as Dexter comes into a greater sense of what he needs in terms of human connection, he's that much more vulnerable to loneliness.
Mm.
Um, and and as a result is maybe that much more he he's craving sort of connection or recognition
Mhm.
that I don't think he's experienced before, and that's an interesting wrinkle this time around.
Yeah, I will say that the location change has been so exciting because, again, when you say the loneliness too, that juxtaposition of being in a city that is so big and then having this person kind of disappear in the crowd, like you can't tell, and he does feel that way sometimes. But I do love that it's New York now, and I think it's a fun playing field for all of you, and I cannot wait for season two. Last question is more of a selfish one. I need to know, will we see Princess Crow's music again in season two of this show? I know we had it in New Blood and then we did it again.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fans.
Um, hope so.
Hope so. Okay, fingers crossed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
We are starting to release some new stuff, so maybe
Okay.
some of that will make its way in. Yeah.
Are you going to do a tour or anything?
No plans as of yet.
Okay.
We're just sort of focusing on getting the music out, but
Okay. Sounds good. But I hope you come to Toronto then if you ever do the tour, because that would be
great.
fun to see you live.
Yes,
But
we should.
we should, you should. Again, thank you so much for your time today. I know you're so busy, so I really appreciate you taking the opportunity to talk to me today.
Absolutely.